celebrating 20 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible.
This is Anything is Possible. I'm Halloran Hilton Hill. These are great stories about great people whose lives prove that anything is possible. My guest today is Tim Matthews. And whether you like it or not, you're stuck with a new friend.
I love it.
Thank you for being with us today.
You're very welcome.
Let's start at the beginning of your story, which starts in Kentucky.
It does.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Middlesboro, Kentucky, a border city right on the border of Tennessee and Virginia, tri-state area. My parents were both educators of sorts. My dad was a professor at Lincoln Memorial University, and my mom was a piano teacher. She also substitute taught at the local elementary school.
What was your life like? What was the community like?
Well, in a lot of ways, probably quite typical of a small southern community back in the 60s when I was growing up there. Divided in some ways. We had West End Elementary School and we had East End Elementary School, and you can imagine that the line dividing the two was largely along socioeconomic lines. West End was more prosperous, more successful people. East End tended to be lower end economically speaking, more minorities in the East End as well. I grew up in the East End and became very familiar with what it felt to live, let's say, on the other side of the tracks, so to speak.
What did that feel like? I mean, what do you remember feeling?
Well, there was an irony. When I was 9 years old, my father inherited a home on the West End from his uncle who had no children, and begged my mom to move to the West End of town. And she refused to because her father had built her home in the East End, and that was where she felt like was her place. And she felt like it was good to be exposed to the community as I saw it, which I think she was right about in a lot of ways. But it felt different. It was definitely one where you felt of lesser importance and inferior in some ways. But my parents never let me feel that way.
So you didn't feel that from your parents?
I didn't feel it.
But society has a way of making you feel. What was it like racially there? I don't think I've ever talked to you about that.
No, I think not. The West End was predominantly white. A very, very small percentage of black students in the West End Elementary School, and the East End was a mix of white and black. Prior to the Brown versus Board of Education decision in 1954, there was a, quote, colored school in the community, but it was on the east end of town. It was closed down, and the East End Elementary School became the place where blacks and whites would mix. And so it was much more, on a percentage basis, it was much more black than the West End was.
Was there tension there around that? Do you remember?
Oh, most definitely, definitely. But again, it's interesting because there was a side of the culture that was restraining and constraining, and almost inculcated a certain culture that you were encouraged to stay in, if you will. But then there were bright spots. I remember so many different bright spots in our community too. For example, Middlesboro was famous for having one of the first integrated baseball teams. And one of the famous players that went to the University of Kentucky that broke the race barrier was a guy named Greg Page, who lived in and grew up in Middlesboro, Kentucky. He also unfortunately passed away due to a football injury in practice there. But he's one of the men who has a bronze statue in front of the University of Kentucky baseball stadium. He was from my hometown. And then from church, we were taught about equality. We were taught to think of people and treat people with equality. And my parents were very much in that same vein. So on the one hand, there was a certain amount of culture that imposed restraints and constraints on the way you thought. And on the other hand, the church, the baseball team, bright spots in the community, leaders who had a different point of view, a more progressive point of view, which I gravitated to.
You know, what's interesting is that I lived in Dothan, Alabama for a while, and I've been a lot of different places, and I've always been amazed how people find hope or possibility in places that really don't promote it. So, you know, if you look at your resume, you've done some pretty impressive things. You're a double Harvard grad. My understanding is that the basic notion was nobody from Middlesboro goes to Harvard.
No, that was not a thing. That was definitely not a thing.
So how does it become a thing
Well, first
for
of
you
all,
in that place?
a lot of people didn't go to college at all.
Right.
And that was okay. And I remember hearing this phrase early in my childhood, do you work or do you draw? Well, I didn't know what that meant at first. And then someone explained, well, you either had kind of a job, maybe you're a mechanic at the local gas station, or you drew welfare checks. So do you work or do you draw? That was sort of the phrase. And everything was kind of binary in that way. And I wasn't brought up that way. My dad, who was very intelligent, introduced me to the Time Life series of books. And I would read about the universe, and I would read about physiology or biology or all these different kinds of science topics. And that helped me see beyond, you know, am I going to work or am I going to draw? No, I'm going to be something different. I'm going to go beyond the boundaries that seem to be set or inculcated in this particular culture.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up,
Jewelry Television has a history of people who care compassionately about their people. And I would say to myself, if there's any group of people that I would love to help more to be successful, it would be this group of people.
So hope springs alive in you. You've got great parents. Your parents are exposing you to things. Seeds of possibility are being placed in you and around you so that you believe in something beyond. But I think in another conversation we had, you told me about a teacher by the name of Gladys.
Gladys DeMarcus. Yes, she was my senior honors English teacher, my junior year and senior year in high school. But she was also very important in my formative years because in the 6th grade, we had, as a part of our English class there, a debate competition. And a friend of mine who became maybe my best childhood friend, we were winners of this competition. And she identified us as potential high school debate talent. So in the 7th grade and in the 8th grade, she made sure that we had opportunities to be on the high school debate tournament circuit, which was a great opportunity for us. We got exposed to doing research and libraries that we had never seen before, and we got to go travel to debate workshops at places like Wake Forest and Northwestern and the University of Kentucky. And this opened our eyes as well. But rolling the clock forward, when I was applying to college, I wasn't really thinking about a place like Harvard. And she suggested that I should apply. This was an encouragement to me that really came out of the blue. I would have never thought that that was a possibility, but it was in her mind. And so I even went home and told my parents about this suggestion, and they kind of dismissed it, to be honest with you. But Gladys DeMarcus was very persistent, and she felt like that was a possibility. And so I applied and was able to go to college, and of course I stayed there for law school as well.
You know, the show's called Anything is Possible. And how many people are one Gladys away from maybe even a fuller potential, right? And I think that's something that's amazing about you. The Harvard credential is an amazing credential. It's an amazing network. But I'll tell you, in my conversations with you, I think that you are a possibility person with or without that credential because you're an optimist, you're a believer, right? You believe that things are possible. For me personally, let me pause to just say something to you directly and personally. I want to say thank you to you. I came to you with an idea. You know, we've done a few things together, and I presented an idea to you. And I remember sitting in your conference room, and you looked at the idea, and then you looked at me, and you said, let's do it. Right? That was a gladdest moment. But now that I unpacked more of your story, I can see how you would see that. Right? And I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That's huge.
I think it's really, Halloran, more to your credit than mine, though, because I think you have spent your life devoted to helping people, helping realize their possibilities, opening up new worlds for them. And I've observed that. I've heard you speak many times. Even before we knew each other personally, I had been influenced by the charisma with which you spoke, by the intelligence that you brought to the table to different topics, by the encouragement that you were able to render, by the infusion of joy into your life and into the lives of other people. And so I'd like to package all that up. I saw the possibility of putting that joy and enthusiasm and that intellect to work to help us at JTV.
Well, in your story, I see that. You go to Harvard, you go to Harvard Law, then you go to Cincinnati, and you're getting into the practice of law, partner in a really successful firm. Talk a little bit about making that transition. First of all, it's grueling. The Harvard experience really battle tests you and gets you ready. You make it through Harvard, you go to Cincinnati, then what?
Well, I started with my father-in-law in a very small boutique tax firm. I loved studying federal income tax. I know that's a little nerdy, but as a fellow nerd, I can talk about it. I loved helping people with their tax planning, thinking about how to fashion their financial affairs in such a way that it was more tax efficient for them, or maybe their company, how to do things, maybe a merger or an acquisition in a more tax efficient way. I love the aspect of being able to help people, and this was a particular talent that I felt like I had that I could bring to bear in my work life. And so we practiced together for about 6 years, and then we merged into another firm, Keating, Muething, and Kleekamp, that needed a good tax practice. So there were 4 of us in the small firm. We merged into a larger firm, and I became the 17th partner of that law firm as a result of the merger, and continued on with my tax practice. But over time, that morphed into more transactional work. And then some of my interest in technology emerged. I became known as one of the people in Cincinnati that people could go to for technology-related advice. I started investing in different kinds of technology, started my own television production company, started a company that did staging and lighting for events and corporate activities. And eventually that led me to a place where I discovered JTV. And in the process of developing some of these other talents outside the practice of law, understanding television production, for example, understanding not only the technology behind it, but how you produced it, how you edited it, the use of talent in connection with productions and things like that. All of that was a precursor, was foundational, if you will, to becoming the CEO at JTV.
But did you know along the way that this is adding up to this?
No. You could never have predicted that.
My understanding is that you, and you're a modest man, so I hope this is not offensive to you in any way, but my understanding is you were a rock star attorney. You were the go-to guy. People really respected your work, and you were doing really well at it. Jewelry television at that point was at an inflection point. So you don't come into the most ideal of situations. In fact, if I remember correctly, the entire economy was going into what is called the Great Recession. Talk about making the decision to pivot at that moment in your life. You're riding high, you got a great family, you're in a great city, you're entrenched in that city, right?
Very much.
And you decide to pull up roots and come here. Is that a God thing? What happens?
I think definitely it's a God thing, Halloran. I think that, and it relates to my personal philosophy about how you find purpose in life, which I think ultimately is found in your relationship with God. But a lot of people think of purpose as maybe a vocational direction or an avocation or some mix of those things, or purpose in terms of where I should live or what I should do when I'm there. And a lot of people also wish purpose to be revealed as like a grand reveal. The curtain is pulled back and my purpose is revealed, or a bolt of lightning comes out of the sky and my purpose is revealed, or I'm struck down and become blind on the road to Damascus, or some other supernatural event occurs. But actually, I think that for most people, including myself, purpose is slowly revealed. A window's opened, a door is opened, and you see things in a slightly different light. And so with JTV, what I think I saw was that everything in my life up to the point where I came to JTV to become its CEO had been placed in front of me as an opportunity to grow and to learn and to be better, but it was also foundational for a new opportunity. So I learned about television broadcasting, never thinking that I would be running a TV broadcast company. I learned about web development, never thinking that we would have one of the largest websites to sell jewelry in the world, right? I learned about HR and finance and all these other different aspects of how you would run a company through my interactions in my law practice. And so when the recession hit, I felt that I had been prepared for a different role. And that's how my purpose at that point in time was revealed.
But you step into a whole lot of challenges.
Oh, yes. Kind of a mess in a lot of ways.
Do you like fixing messes?
Well, I do. I feel like I do have some fixing capabilities. And so I do like fixing things. But also was drawn to the people here. Jewelry television has a history of people who care compassionately about their people. Bob Hall, Jerry Sisk, Bill Counts, the three co-founders of the company, were very honorable, ethical, trustworthy, honest people, and I was attracted to their ethics in business as well. And I would say to myself, if there's any group of people that I would love to help more to be successful, it would be this group of people.
Let me ask you this, and I couldn't figure it out, but then knowing you and knowing that we share the nerd gene, it makes sense. I'm thinking to myself, double degree from Harvard, you come to jewelry television, and it's like the first order of business is for you to go back to school to get all of the certifications. Like I don't know all of the certifications, but there's something in England, and then there's the GIA, and all I know is it looks like you got all of them. Why'd you do that?
Well, now in fairness, that didn't happen immediately. There were more pressing issues and challenges that we had to overcome. I came in April of 2008, 14 years ago. I didn't seek those certifications until 4 years later. But you're right, I did seek my graduate gemology degree from the Gemological Institute of America. I also sought my diamond diploma degree and my basically the colored gemstone degree equivalent from the Gemological Association of Great Britain. And I completed those courses of study in about 13 months. It was very intense, extremely challenging to do that much work in a very compressed period of time. But I wanted to complete them. I had a strong desire to complete them, to communicate to the entire company how important it was to be educated, to be knowledgeable, to seek advancement of your skills and knowledge and expertise. Something I feel very passionately about, that doors and windows open up through knowledge and through pursuit of one's skills and the refinement of those skills. And when people become really dedicated to learning, great things can happen. That's one way that possibilities become possible.
That's huge. What did you learn through the Great Recession and the restructuring of this company?
Oh goodness, that's such a big question. There are many, many things to learn. One is that it was marvelous when people work as a team, how you can step up. You know, recognizing that one person is not responsible for success. It takes a family, it takes a village, it takes a team. And to see a team step up is a beautiful thing. I like to draw the analogy to an orchestra. The conductor is without sound, but when he orchestrates all of the different strings and the horns and the percussion instruments in the way that he does, a beautiful thing can happen. And so I feel like my role is maybe the least important musically, but yet it's a coordination role that helps everybody else bring their talents to bear and make beautiful music as a result. And that's what happened then, and that's what still, I want to see happen at our company.